Oh man, what's going to happen when my friend listens to that episode and she's like, "Oh my god, he's calling me out. He's calling me out." Oh wait, she doesn't listen to these episodes. She can't call him out because she will not know about it. Yeah. Yeah. I got contacted by a booking agent who said she was a big fan of the Ripple Effect podcast with yours truly. She said she had been in the industry for over 10 years, has listened to lots of shows. And she said, Steve, the reason I like your show is not only do you bring interesting guests, but you have this commitment to helping your audience understand the importance of doing good out there in the world, creating positive and making a difference when and where you can, creating those positive ripples, connecting and engaging with other people. And you do it in a way that makes the listener or the audience want to take action. I was blown away. I was like, okay, well, what's the angle here? Come on, I'm waiting for the pitch. And there was no pitch. The only pitch, to be fair, actually, was they had a guest that aligned with my messaging, my approach, what I want to bring to you as my audience for content. And I agreed to get on a call with this person because half the time I get these contacts, you can just tell it's just somebody who's just found a show, reaching out to the host or the producer and saying, I've got the perfect guest. Oh, by the way, I'm a big fan. Oh, really? What do you like about the show? Tell me a little bit about it. So I stopped actually taking those calls because I found most of those people were BSing me. Not a good ripple, by the way. But on this particular instance, this person was persistent. Persistent. Persistent, Steve. That's what it was. She was very persistent about a individual opinion of my show, including sending me some links, which is super easy to look up and find. And, you could be like, vanity metric, Steve. She's just appealing to your ego. But I wanted to see if that was true. I suspected it might. I had a sneaking suspicion, but I did not know if it was true. I did not know until I got on the phone with her whether she was, blowing some smoke up the old proverbial ripple skirt or if she was a legitimate fan. So I got on. And of course, she's a fan of the show, so she's going to hear this, and maybe it'll make her smile. That's why I'm not calling her out by name. She shall remain nameless, but I think it'll probably give her a smile. I was like, how long have you been listening to the show? I just wanted to qualify that. She actually said she discovered it about 18 months ago. Oh, fantastic. She's like, but I went back into the archives. I went back to some of those earlier episodes. And I got what you were trying to do. And she said, I also sensed the shift when you decided to start to bring on guests. And one of the nice compliments that got made was my confidence in my interviewing skills. She said, I can almost sense the maturing right before me. And I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. And then she called out a couple of particular episodes. Now, yes, I know it was an ego thing. She could have been looking at a sticky note with all the notes, right? Oh, yeah, be sure to mention this episode and this episode. And Steve's going to love it when he hears about that episode and why you were a fan. And oh, yes. And then you got him. Set the hook. Really, man? Yeah. But here's the thing. She didn't want to sell me anything. She wasn't trying to sell me her services. She didn't want to be like, hey, look, we could have an arrangement. I could send you really interesting guests. You pay me some money. No, that wasn't it. And I asked her what the catch was. And she said, no catch. I'm a fan. And she said that one thing that really impressed her was my authenticity as it came across. And I was so appreciative, right? And I was probably a little too honest about the evolution of the show and how my really sincere lack of confidence in my abilities in certain capacities, including interviewing interesting, successful people, including having good quality content to even put out there to compete in the podcast world. Whether I was the guy, whether it was right, or whether I was just doing it because everybody else was doing it, but I'm not really making a difference. I'm not really creating a positive ripple. To which she said, "You did for me, and I know you do it for others." And that's why I want to bring you this guest, because I think that they can, by extension of your audience, make a positive ripple. And I love that. So had to share that story with you before we kick off. In fact, as we kick off, let's just start right there. Welcome to season 10 of the Ripple Effect podcast. I am your host, Steve Harper. If you did not figure that out and you listened all the way up to this point, then you're probably like, oh yeah, we got that, dude. But there might be some new people. I have found out over the course of the past year, this show and its growth in audience, that there's something happening. There's like a little movement afoot. I won't say a big movement, but a little movement, like tiny. But I saw a big jump, for me anyway, in how many people were listening to this, to our episodes, how many people were going back and replaying the episodes, figuring out our reach in multiple different platforms. And we grew across the board. And as we enter into season 10, I can't begin the season without telling you how grateful and how appreciative I am of you, my dear listener. I am so humbled and so blessed to be able to do this. I remember starting off in those early episodes, and really kind of this came up with this agent, right? This story I started with about, what did you decide? Why did you decide to create a podcast? And really at the end of the day, I had a few things I wanted to get off my chest. I had a few things I wanted to share about entrepreneurship. I had a few things I wanted to share about my book. But after that, I kind of figured nobody would really care. I didn't expect anybody to tune in or to listen. And what I think is amazing, right? Pretty early in my podcast days, and you guys probably, if you're a regular listener, you probably know this about me, that I am very self-effacing. I'm very challenged when it comes to the confidence factor and worry continually about whether I'm doing it right. Does anybody care? I think we all go through that, right? And obviously, if I'm coaching you, I can help you overcome those things. But when I look at my own world, I suck at overcoming those things. I don't have somebody necessarily that I depend on to come in and go, kick me in the ass and say, keep going, keep doing it. It's the process, it's the approach. But as I look back on 10 seasons and I think of those early days, I was using Apple GarageBand. I was using some like little podcast crappy equipment out of a box, and how much I've upgraded and how different the world looks right now in my world because of this show and what I'm doing with it. I just get so humbled. To see the long path that I've gone on and just how far things have matured. It really is humbling. But I was thinking back to a couple of those earlier days. There's a particular friend. I'm going to take a little sip of coffee. Not a sponsor, but check out this new Ember cup that I got from my son for Christmas. Oh, keeps my coffee deliciously warm continually. Not a sponsor. Ember, if you'd like to sponsor, call me. Ring-a-ding-ding-ding. I'm very, very, very open to being a sponsor to your product. I love this. I really do love this. Oh, I made this coffee like 45 minutes ago. Still piping hot. It's awesome. Okay, where was I? Oh, thinking about the show and the history and my lack of confidence, right? So I would say probably maybe 6 to 8 episodes into doing this podcast, I went to support a friend who was speaking at an event. And another friend of mine was at that event. And she said, I've been listening to your podcast. And I'm like, great. what do you do when somebody says that, right? Oh, well, I hope you like it. Oh, what do you think? It's awkward, right? It's awkward. And I'm sure I used one of these like, awkward turn of phrases, right? Like, hey, well, cool. What do you think? Because being lack of confidence, right? I'm looking for validation. I'm looking for outside validation continually. And well, you say and way too much. It was so goddamn distracting. What? I'm like in shock, right? She's like, it's just like, I don't know. I lost count how many times you did. You clearly aren't comfortable. Are you going off a script? And I was like, no, not going off a script. Yeah, you probably should. I felt like the episode was all over the place, and I listened to a couple of them, but I just couldn't listen to all of them. Okay. And I get it. There are certain people that are like that, right? They'll miss the forest for the trees. Like, hey, tell me what you think of the content. Tell me what you think of what you're hearing. If you're going to give some constructive feedback, why don't you say, hey, I don't know if you're following a structure or not, but something that would be helpful for me as an audience member or a listener. But no, instead, you get the big old knife out, and instead of stabbing me in the back, you go for the kidneys right away. Boom. Right? Ouch. Painful. I left that event feeling horrible. I left that event feeling like a fraud and being like, I'm not doing that anymore. I just started getting on video. I didn't like myself on video. And here I have this person who is supposed to be a good friend, a good supporter, basically telling me I suck balls on the podcast. And I really took it to heart. And so I thought a lot about it, and probably like every time I looked at my podcast equipment, probably that first couple months of doing the show, I look at it and I'm just like, just sick into my stomach. And then I decided, I'm at least going to finish out the year. I'm at least going to, try to put this show, like have a season, right? Maybe nobody's listening. Nobody cares. Maybe they're turned off as much as this person was on the show. But the seed was planted in my head. And I can go back to those earlier episodes and I can see it, right? I can see I was being too cautious, which made me sound almost too robotic. And it was uncomfortable. And I felt like I was struggling even more than I was before. And keep in mind, I do not know the first thing about podcasting at this point. I can't say that my intelligence on it has grown that much in 10 years, but I would love to go back to that version of Steve and just tell that guy, hey, do not listen. Keep being you. Keep doing things the way you think it needs to be done, and you'll find the audience, or you won't, and that's okay. Fortunately, we found our audience. People weren't turned off by my weird speaking ways. They weren't turned off by me going off on rants about crazy crap. They weren't turned off by the fact that I shifted the focus off of just one-on-one conversation like we're doing here and moved it into more of an interview format with more regularity. I think through to probably season 8, I ended up having lunch with this particular person who, by the way, very successful author, speaker. They are, very well spoken, very educated, and come across with confidence and authority. And I remember the lunch conversation when she said, "Are you still doing the podcast?" Yeah. Been doing the podcast for, at this point, probably 8 years. Maybe, I don't remember. Those early days, some of those seasons kind of blend together. We didn't go the full calendar year. We're doing the seasons as full calendar years now, but I would probably say 7 or 8 years into it. And she's like, "Oh, I need to listen to it again and see if you got any better." Said this to my face, right? But I now had 8 seasons under my belt and feeling pretty confident. I'm like, I got to be honest with you. The feedback you gave me way back when, I thought was very useful. I felt like it was maybe a little painful to hear at the time. but I want to thank you for it. And rather than understanding or acknowledging what I was saying in the moment, this was her response. Oh, well, I mean, it was the least I could do. It's like a public service announcement. I mean, I don't know how you would ever get any listeners if that's what you did. Now, this is also, by the way, somebody who for years and years has said they were 1,000% committed to helping promote me and to help further my message, and did, in fairness, open a few doors to speaking opportunities and some coaching and strategic consulting. And I always appreciate that, right? But at the end of the day, I felt like came full circle in that moment. Like 8 years later, I could with confidence say what the show was about. I could with confidence say what I was doing and why. I could say with confidence that I am the first person who will look you in the eye and say, I'm not going to make any apologies for how I do what I do. I am not going to worry about the ums and the ahs and the awkward pauses, because that is me. That is who I am. It's my speaking style. It's my presentation style. I try to take those conscious pauses to give myself time to process what I'm going to say so that I can ensure what comes out of my mouth has value and makes an impact. And that's true whether I'm, doing a keynote for a conference, whether I'm delivering a talk for a small work group or team, or coming to you through the podcast. It is 100% my commitment to not worry about the crap that isn't worth worrying about. And so as we approach this kicking off season 10, I couldn't begin to tell you how proud I am of this show, where it has gone, where we have grown it, what we have done with it. And it's all because of you, right? Our listeners have responded so strongly about what we're doing right. And it just makes me so proud to have people come up to me out of the blue and say, hey, I listened to your podcast. I really liked it. I really felt like you were talking just to me, which continually focuses me on upping my game to be delivering the best that I can, showing up as the best version of myself for those interviews, asking, questions that make that conversation interesting, turning it into an experience that you might want to come back and listen to again and again and again. These are the things that are the most important to me, because at the end of the day, the goal and the approach that we are taking with this show is to make a difference. And so when I'm actually listening to these other shows, I'm actually taking mental notes about their interview style, their approach. And I do it because I don't want to be like the also rants. I don't want to be like an imitator of what they're doing, but I want to take the good ideas, the good approaches, the good thoughts, and see how I can recraft that and put it through the lens of the ripple in the show here and give you more. And so as I look to embark on season 10 and I look at the lineup of guests that we have, I am grateful beyond measure that I can approach somebody about coming on the show and they can go to my recent episodes. They're like, yeah. Like I just had somebody, she's like, yeah, I got to do my homework. And I was like, oh, I got you. I understand. I completely understand. And I'm like, yeah, I'll just sit over here and sip my coffee while you look at my episodes. And I did. Ooh. Still warm. Honestly, no. She said she would do some research. She would check out the show. And she came back and she said, you know what? This is a phenomenal show. This is something I do want to be a part of. This is something I would really, really like to participate in. And I was so grateful. And I did, before I let her go, we'd scheduled, she's going to be a future guest, which I'm grateful for. And when she hears this episode, she's going to be like, hey, that's me he's talking about. I asked her, I said, what really changed your mind? Like, I'm curious, because here I was contacting you kind of out of the blue. We were sort of Instagram buddies, but didn't really know each other as well as I'd like. But I'm very inspired by the work. And I said, I'm just curious, what pushed you over the edge to say yes? And she was really taken back, like, wow. I mean, I said, yes, why do you care? Right. And I'm like, because it's important to me. I would like to know what it was that, was it something I said? Was it an episode you saw? Or what's the thing? Why? Right. And then she said, it's authenticity. She said, you're talking about authenticity on some of your YouTube shorts. I am subscribing to your YouTube channel, and I see that you are the guy that shows up not only on those videos, but in your podcast episodes. And from those podcast episodes into the other content you put out online and how you interact with people. And she said, this is a perfect example, how you've interacted with me exclusively via X. And yet you are exactly the same person I heard in my DMs as you are on this Zoom. And I'm like, whoa. And she said, that just impresses me. She said, this is what I like, is people who aren't one way and then, be a different way when, the stakes are high or you're going for the ask. I was appreciative of that. I was appreciative of that honesty. And I couldn't begin to tell you how big a difference that made for me, right? These are the things that I love to experience. These are the things that I love to understand as to why people are listening. Why is there, what's important to my audience? What's the type of content? And I encourage you guys, right? If you're hearing this and you would be so inclined to take the time, send me an email, steve@ripplecentral.com. Be sure to put in the subject line, podcast feedback. Tell me what you want to hear, what you have particularly liked about the show. Where can we build it so that it brings additional value to you? And I say it in almost an individualistic plea, because the reality is I could try and create a show for the masses. And I wish I had Joe Rogan money. I wish I had Joe Rogan fame and reputation that could watch this show take off. But I don't, right? And so I want to be very intentional and specific about this, but I also don't want to be so commercialized, so generic, if you will, that, you're really not speaking to a particular set of listeners, right? And I think the only way that I sort of qualify my set of listeners, I'm a data-driven guy, so I kind of like to look at what the feedback is. I like to hear what the comments are. I like to be able to put these things on a chart somehow and be able to say, all right, here's some trending topics. Here's some things we can talk about. And that feedback comes from you. So steve@ripplecentral.com is a great way to have that one-on-one interaction with me. Tell me what you need from this podcast, and I will do what I can to deliver that as we go into season 10. Also want to make two additional pleas to you, right? One is, you guys all know very interesting people out there in the world, and we are trying to feature really interesting and inspiring and motivational people. I'd love introductions. If you see that there's a good fit for someone in your network or someone that you follow that you admire, reach out to them and say, hey, is it okay if I put your name forward to this guy? Because he always is interested in meeting amazing, interesting people for his podcast. And I think you'd be an excellent guest. Number one, as a Ripple creator, you will have just done it. You will have cast that stone and you will have made an impact on that person, because you're telling them they are significant to you, and that you find value in whatever it is that they do or who they are as a human being, and that you want to make that connection to me so that we can further the story, the legend, the awesomeness of their way of working or as an entrepreneur, or, their contribution to the world, a way for us to highlight and feature that. You will make an impact on that person. I can guarantee you. And you will be making an impact on me. That seems somewhat obvious or redundant for me to tell you that, but it's absolutely true. 1000% do I appreciate the people that come and listen to the show and say, hey, I got somebody that has a good story. I think they would be a great fit for the show. So that is my other plea. My last or ask of you is that one of the things that we want to do is we want to produce episodes with more regularity. And we're also looking for companies who might want to sponsor. We got a small but loyal fan base to the show, and we're looking for a set of sponsors for the show. So if you know somebody or you work for a company who's looking for a few dollars to put a few dollars somewhere where they can get their name out there, contact me, steve@ripplecentral.com, and let's talk. I don't want to turn this into one of those full-on shows that just does nothing but ads, but I do feel like after 10 years, I need to start treating this like a business. I need to figure out a way to continue to add value. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is our paid subscribership on Substack. And very shortly, I think we'll probably be on Patreon. So you have to stay tuned for that. But it's a good way for us to support the efforts that are going into making this show. And believe it or not, you might think that, hey, it's just a guy sitting in front of a microphone. How difficult can it be? Well, you could go back to my earlier episodes and my edits, and you could take a gander at that. And then you can kind of see the level of production that I've got here, because I've actually assembled a really excellent team out of, these guys have just taken a lot of the responsibility out of my hands and have allowed me to do what I do. And then they come make it look fantastic. But that comes at a price, right? And right now I need to find a way to, offset some of those costs. And so this is a perfect way to do it. Right. So, if you know somebody who would be interested in advertising on this show, send them my way. If you know a company that you think would be benefited by us doing a little plug for them, send them my way. If you are a product company or product manager out there and you're looking to extend the reach of your stuff, if it's a good alignment with my Ripplers, I have no problem taking a gander at your product, your service, and then giving a personal endorsement of it should it be good. If it's not good, don't call me. Don't reach out to me, because I don't want to be the Temu podcast promoter. Right? So I don't want like stuff that's cheap that's going to break 3 weeks after you bought it. Just would not be bueno. Would not be a good Ripple for my Ripplers anyway. And I guess probably the one thing that I would say is go to my Substack, right? Go to ripplecentral.com, go to my blog. It'll take you to my Substack link. And then we actually are going to be doing in 2025 new content for our paid subscribers. It's $60 a year if you want to support that effort over there and get a little bit of extra insight. That would be one way to do it. So we'll put a link in the show notes for you to get there as well, so you can sign up and just catch some of the written content that we've got coming out of the Ripple headquarters, and I think you'll enjoy it. So there you go. There's my commercial, my plug. There. I don't know. That was maybe a little too much. So back to reality. Back to reality. I don't know. I'm not a rapper. What do you want to say? Love you, Eminem, but I am not you. Anyway, I was also thinking about this conversation that I'd had with this individual, and then 8 years later, how different that conversation was. And when I actually kind of pointed out the fact that they kind of inspired and motivated me to want to do better, and I appreciated that feedback. Part of the story that I left off was, but I actually used it as an opportunity to school this person on what feedback is. Feedback is only valuable to the person that hears it when they ask for it. And I'm sure that I did ask for it by just opening up, because I knew nothing else to say is, oh, great, you're listening to the show. Fantastic. What'd you think? Right? By that little nudge, that is the door that opened right there. Right. So I didn't be like, hey, tell me anything you want to tell me. And I said, but I got to say, the way you delivered it hurt my feelings, because you weren't actually concentrating on anything you thought I did well. Maybe you didn't think I did anything well. But at the end of the day, what I heard was nothing but negative. And there's my ums. The more I talk about this, the ums, the ahs, they all come back. I said, that is a concern for me, because at the end of the day, I ended up walking away from that conversation feeling really bad. Like, why even continue? Why should I even keep being committed to the cause of, doing a podcast show? And they failed to get it. And so they continued to fail to get it. So what I did was say, look, I don't think what you're not hearing what I'm trying to tell you. Is I feel like there is a value to giving feedback always, but I think you always have to be cognizant of who you're giving it to and why. If it is just for the sake of bashing somebody, you don't really care what carnage you create. So the feedback loop goes unchecked, right? But I know that at that point you were trying to be helpful and beneficial, but you weren't, because at the time you were struggling, I think, to say anything positive about it. And really, at the end of the day, you basically said it was unlistenable, and it might have been, right. I've listened to a few of those early episodes, and I can see the maturity and the growth. But here we are 8 years later. We've connected on so many levels. We've done so many things. I've actually supported you on a number of efforts, but 8 years later, you're basically asking me if I'm still doing the podcast, which of course I was. And I said, why don't you tune in and let me know what you think? What's the difference? And I think that they were a little miffed at my feedback. And to be fair, I think they were just being polite and, oh, are you still doing it? Right? Yeah, of course I've been still doing it. You're not listening? Obviously not. And then getting into why the feedback was helpful, but also a little bit harmful, that it gave me the yips. It gave, every time I went to record, I was like, I would stumble over my words. I was really, really struggling. And I even struggled in those early interviews, and I was awkward. I felt awkward because it wasn't my natural state. And then I realized, Steve, all you're doing in this moment is you are creating an opportunity to be the channel for these people's awesomeness. Just have some great questions, get them engaged in conversation, do what you do, and the rest will take care of itself. The confidence will come, the words will fall into place. God will give you the wisdom to ask the questions that you need to ask at the exact moment you need to ask them. And you will uncover valuable information, valuable knowledge nuggets that your audience will benefit from. And so when I had that conversation, she didn't even know we had moved to an interview format. And I wasn't challenging her to go listen to it necessarily, but I did say I would love to hear if you think the show is different, if you feel like there is a little more polish to the final product. And probably maybe a week later, I get a call back, and she said, as a totally different show. And she said, I also thought about how I gave you the feedback that I gave you. And now thinking back, in the way I delivered it was so rude and so rough. And she said, I have to apologize. I thought back to that conversation, and she said, you and I talk crap to each other all the time. And she said, I felt like in that moment, it was like that kind of conversation. Right. And she said, and I realized at the time you're looking for feedback to improve the show and not looking for a sock in the arm. And she said, I've got to apologize now, realizing that the feedback and the words that were used were harmful, and that it could have caused me to stop altogether. And that's kind of the impact that we all have, right, out there in the world, right? We say the right things at the right times. It can make all the difference for someone. You place a compliment for someone that's really been struggling, and it can turn everything around on them. Or you hit somebody below the belt when they already have no confidence, or when they are struggling in some way. You might just give them a death blow that they never get up from. And I realize and feel today this sense of pride in that I currently, with this show, have so much confidence in what we're doing. I feel proud of the output, the work that we are putting into and making this the best podcast it can be. It's a small team. It's a small operation. And yet we are, I feel, putting out as quality of content as some of these really high produced shows that are out there. And that makes me proud. And it comes from a place of authenticity. It comes from a place of commitment. It comes from a place of my deep, deep desire to make a difference in many lives as I possibly can, including this friend that isn't very good at giving feedback. I know you're probably thinking, well, what happened at 8 years and after, the lunch, and then you got that feedback? Are they continuing to listen? No. And that's okay. The show's not made for them. It's not a fit for them, which is, I'm not going to beat my head against a wall trying to get this person convinced they need to be a part of it. I'm not going to lose any sleep over the fact that, I may not be popular in her, her grand scheme of things, she might not be the person I go to with the ask that I gave to you, which is, hey, if you know people who might benefit from this show, would you share it? Would you share it not only with people who want to listen to it, but maybe people who want to be on it, right? That's fine. We often have to figure out our own ways, our own paths. And I think that this is a message that probably impacts every one of you. There are things out there in the world that you're destined to do. They may not be the most comfortable. They may not feel like the perfect fit at the time, but you have to continue to show up. You have to continue to put in the work, and things get easier. This podcast for me was a stretch. It was a way to help improve my verbalization, my communication skills, my deep desire to communicate beyond the pages of my book, what I'm thinking, the concepts that are going on in my head all the time. If you took a CAT scan or a CT scan or whatever the hell scan goes into your brain, my brain is just, it would be like the middle of the ring of the circus, chaos, a mass, right? But I'm always on the hunt for a different angle, a different way to teach, a different way to coach, a different way to interview, a different way to present content, a different way to do videos. I am in this beautiful phase of my life where I am realizing I don't have to be an expert at that everything. I have the opportunity to learn from so many that have come before me that are doing things out there that are making a difference. And I don't have to be perfect, not because I don't want to be, but because nobody expects that. People like a little bit of humanness. They like a little bit of honesty. They like it when people can, sink their teeth into the content and get some value out of that. Like take big chunks of value and go apply it to their lives or their relationships or their career paths. And that to me is probably invigorated my interest in what I do for this show and the efforts that we put forward on its behalf even more. It makes me proud. And so I want to wish you a beautiful start to the new year. I hope that 2025 is going to be the best year for you, but I also want it to be the best year for me. I'll tell you a little secret. However, the only way that is going to happen is if we show up and we put in the work and we stay committed and stay focused on what is important and what is critical. And we don't let negative feedback deter us. We don't let people's opinions derail us. We don't let people who think we should be doing something completely different get away with that crap. We stay focused and committed to our path. We stay committed to doing things the way we think that they should be done. And does that mean that you have to stay committed 1000% to the direction you're headed? Absolutely not. You can make changes and adjustments along the way. You can control your destiny by taking control of the steering wheel of your life, your career, your relationships, and you can guide it and direct it in a way that you want it to go. But that is on you. You have to step up to the plate. You have to step into the driver's seat and not let life just drive you, but take control and drive through life. Create the journey that you want to create and find an avenue and an opportunity to engage this world differently, to create as many positive ripples on a daily basis as you can. That's my goal. That's my ambition for this show. That is why I love what I do. And yeah, you might have to put up with some ums and some ahs and some awkward, weird Steve-isms and Steve awkward pauses. Sometimes I do that. It's like, hello, Stevie, are you in there? And the guy's got to go upstairs and go, and he's got to recrank that engine, get that hamster sparking in his butt and go, oh yeah, I'm running. Okay, here we go. Boom. That was a visual you probably didn't need, but I'm just me, baby. That's the only way I can be. Anyway, I want to go into 2025 being your biggest supporter. So drop me some Drop me some words of encouragement you need, or motivations, or topics, or subjects, or books, or whatever you want to see or hear on the show in the upcoming months ahead. I would love to hear from you about what that is that best serves you. So send it to steve@ripplecentral.com. This entire episode has been brought to you by Ripple Central. All things Ripple start at Ripple Central. That's where you can learn about my work in terms of keynote speaking, coaching, strategic relationship consulting. You can learn about how to get mass quantities of my book to your team, to the organizations that you maybe are participating in, the boards that you sit on. Everybody needs to know about the Ripple. Everybody needs to know how to show up and create authentically positive ripples out there in the world. I can help them. That book can help them. My coaching can help them. And for organizations or for companies that are really struggling with that team dynamic, well, by God, we got something for you guys as well. So go to ripplecentral.com, check it out. But most importantly, be sure to get on our newsletter, Ripple Central, ripplecentral.com/subscribe. That'll get you on our newsletter so you won't miss anything that goes out. And then be sure to go to my blog on the website, and that'll bounce you over to Substack. You can find me. You can subscribe there. There's multiple ways that I'm going to be like tapping you, but I'm not one of those annoying people that sends you something every single day. I don't even send you something every 3 days. Probably don't even send you something every week, honestly. But that's the way we stay in contact and stay in touch. And I just want to thank you guys for listening. I want to thank you for being along for the ride, the journey. Season 10, baby. Let's get this bad boy going, right? Let's go. I'm pumped. I'm excited. I'm really, really, really happy. And my coffee still warm. Oh, so warm and delicious. Anyway, you guys have a great start to your 2025, and I can't wait to be back with another episode with an interesting guest very, very soon. Until then, as always, ripple on.